Hi, welcome to Ruby's Ask Me Anything office hours. My name is Dan Merrick. I'm Director of Plant Based Culinary. During this session, we open up questions to our students. Basically, what you have to do is type on the right hand side in the question box, type any question that's related to food. My expertise in particular is plant based, so try to keep it within those realms. Just hit the add button and it'll be added to our queue. Now, if you have a question on the right-hand side you want to be answered first, just click the heart button and it'll be brought up to the top as well. So let's dive right into our questions here. The first one is from Beth. Beth says, please speak out about cooking oils in terms of smoke point and storage for optimal taste and health. Should we be concerned about the high heating cooking of olive oil? Thank you. So yeah, there are definitely different smoke points for oils. Olive oil, oddly enough, has a very low smoke point. So it's at like 220 degrees, I believe, that it starts to smoke off. And basically, that, kind of alters the flavor of the oil and gives you more of a burnt like flavor. And you'll actually see kind of a black smoke coming off of it when you're actually cooking using that. Most people want to use high heat cooking oils when you're cooking something like that. Avocado oil is a great one to be able to use. Canola oil, some people like to use as well too. But there are a lot of different high heat oils that kind of an everyday oil for cooking if you'd like to use those. Olive oil is great for things like salads, for dressings, for finishing. So if you really like the taste of oil, you can finish with it as well. It's actually great for sauces too. So a lot of people will put it at the end of a sauce just to make sure that it's not being heated up too much. So those are great ways to be able to use the lower smoke versus the higher smoke oils. Now, for storage wise, you typically want to keep them in a cool, dark place so they're not getting a lot of sunlight through them. And that's probably about the extent of what I do. Is in a like just in a pantry is fine. Just make sure it's a dark place at the same time too. Hope that helps, Beth. Our next question here is from Sue. Chef Dan, what are your thoughts on food safe silicone, muffin molds, popsicle molds, etc.? I love making fruit filled popsicles with my granddaughter. I love doing that with my kids too. We make them all the time. For the food safe silicone, we do all kinds of things using like agar in those to be able to make kind of like gelatin, kind of jelly things as well that are plant based. Same with the muffin molds and the popsicle molds. All those things we use in our house pretty regularly. Um, uh, you know, as long as they're food safe, you're okay, and just make sure to wash them well in between uses. Sometimes they'll build up a little bit of a powdery residue on them too, so just make sure to, most of them are dishwasher safe, so I usually just throw mine in the dishwasher to be able to keep those clean. But fun things to be able to do with kids. The more I can get my kids into cooking, the happier I am. So those kinds of things are fun things to do with them. Robert K. What would be an excellent main course dish to introduce someone, possibly unexpectedly, to vegan or vegetarian options? So, Robert, I think the best thing to do for this is just not talk about it. I can't tell you how many times I've made a meal for people, not even knowing that they were, not plant based or they ate meat. And by the end of it, when they're all done eating, they're like, oh, wait, I guess we didn't even have any meat, did we? And that's just kind of the way it works out. So I think the best thing to do is lean into your expertise. So lean into the dishes that you like best to be able to prepare, that you can do really well. And the better you can execute the dish, the more they'll be wowed by the taste and flavors of your dishes. and they're probably going to not even realize that there wasn't meat into it. Now, if you're looking for something that's kind of in the replication of meat or something like that, just look for something that's a little more on the umami side. Mushrooms are actually a great way to be able to do that. A lot of times I'll use mushrooms in different kinds of ways to be able to either press them into like a steak like texture, or to use them in tacos, or even to like bread them, and have them as um, like a chicken parmesan or something like that, but using or parmesan chicken, but just using a mushroom instead. So if you're looking for like more of a meat replacement kind of a thing, that might be a little more up your alley for that. If you are using oil, you can do a deep fried, batter on a mushroom that comes out very much like a fried chicken or something like that too. But otherwise, yeah, just stick with what you know well and good flavors, and you probably won't have to even talk about meat afterward. All right. Next one is for Sanjita. Will we have hands-on in-person internship in this course? So Sanjita, I saw that you were in our baking and pastry course. And the hands-on stuff that you do is actually in the course. So we have different activities where we're going to ask you to make different dishes or different pastries or breads in that course in particular. And then you'll upload images of your work and the in process, and then do descriptions of those. And then our online culinary instructors will grade you based on those. Our instructors for that course are particularly trained in baking and pastry, so they will follow you through the entire thing. So there isn't an internship part of it, but there definitely is a hands on part of it. We do a couple courses where there are in person internship styles, but those are accredited apprenticeship programs through the American Chef Federation, and those are typically ones that you would take while you're working at a restaurant, and then your boss would typically grade you based on the criteria that Ruby has set aside, and made into a live course for them as well too. So hands-on, yes, definitely. In person, yep, you will be doing things in person and you will be doing recipes yourself. The internship aspect is definitely something a little bit different. That would be through your work, and if your work has a Ruby platform. Bonnie, some recipes say to chop vegetables and others say dice. What is the difference between chopped and diced vegetables, or is there a difference? Depends on who you ask. If you're asking a home cook, they might say that chopped and diced are the same thing. If you ask a professional cook, they would say absolutely not. A dice is a very specific measurement of a cut, depending on a small dice, a medium dice, a large dice. There are different sizes for each one of those. Chopped basically is kind of like a rough chop. It basically means just kind of chopping it up into bite sized pieces. So there's no kind of intricacy to the shape and size of it. Getting it down to like a cube, because the diced is definitely a cube, where chopped, you don't have to worry about that as much. So if you're chopping celery, it would come out in the shape of a U, right? Just because you're chopping it going that way. Or if you're chopping a bell pepper, it would kind of be uneven surfaces all over. But one thing to remember, though, is even if you're chopping versus dicing, you still want to be able to keep your ingredients basically in the same kind of size, even if it's not a certain shape. That way they can cook they'll be done at the same time when you're cooking them. So there is a difference between chopping and dicing, but sometimes home cooks will use them, just interchangeably. But if you're looking at a professional kitchen, it'll definitely be a big difference between the two. Bill, I'm allergic to soy, and several recipes call for tofu, etc. What can I use to substitute? Bill, that completely depends on the recipe that you are using the tofu in. So, if you're using tofu in something like I don't know, like a cream sauce, like if you're blending it up like a silken tofu, or in even like a dressing, I might, consider using a soaked cashew to make a cashew cream instead, or something like that. If you're doing something like a tofu steak, I might suggest doing something like either a seitan, or maybe just like a wheat loaf, basically, um, or even doing something like a jackfruit or something along those lines. But it really kind of depends on the use case for what you're trying to substitute it for. Feel free to write what you are looking for specifically in another question if you want to, Bill. Debbie, I'm super new to whole food plant based cooking. I've never considered this eating style before 3 months ago. Forks over knives has really helped. I'm having challenge getting my soaked cashews creamy. There are crunch. Any ideas? Yeah. So the longer you soak cashews, the more they will become that creamy like texture, right? So I usually soak mine for about 24 hours. I'll put them in water and then soak them for 24, dump out the water, and then rinse them. And you should be able to almost completely smush the cashew between your fingers, pretty flat. Once you do that, just add it, to a blender with some water and blend it up, and it should come out very, very creamy. Now that's the raw way to do it. There are other ways to be able to do it where you can just put it into a pot with water and boil it to be able to get that same texture. Once they cool down again, you should be able to smush them between your fingers. And that's the point where you're ready to be able to blend them up to get that really creamy cashew consistency. The other thing I might suggest on this too is make sure you're using a high powered blender. Some of the kind of just store-bought blenders that are like $30. Some people would make like margaritas or something and definitely won't work as well to be able to get the texture you're looking for because they look a little bit more grainy. I learned this the hard way by going through many, many, many blenders before actually getting a Vitamix brand, which works very well. I'm not saying you have to buy Vitamix. There are a couple other high-speed blenders out there, but that one works quite well to be able to do a cashew cream. All right, Brian, do you have safety concerns about sous vide and plastic bags due to all the negative press about plastics leaching into food? Not a ton. When they're making the sous vide bags and stuff like that, and even like if you're doing like the Ziplocs and stuff like that, most of those are food safe and they're able to take temperatures at high temperatures to be able to make that happen. Now, you can do a sous vide in, a big pot as well. So that's if you're worried about the plastic, definitely do it in something else. You can there are other ways to be able to do it instead of just plastic bags. The kind of standard though is in a plastic bag. Restaurants do it all the time. I was just at a restaurant last weekend in the kitchen and they had a whole station for sous vide, about five different, large plastic bags being filled up at the same time. So I don't have too much of a concern of it, but that could be a personal preference because are there, microplastics that are kind of leaching into it? Maybe. I haven't done the research as much onto it, but again, if you're having a concern about it, they do make alternatives. They're definitely going to be a little more pricey, but you can take a look and see what you think. Thanks, Brian. Sue. Hi, Chef Dan. Is cooking in an Instapot safe? Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. An Instapot is basically like a pressure cooker, right? So, a lot of people have worries about pressure cookers. I am still a little bit afraid of the stovetop pressure cooker, but I mean, millions of people use them. A lot of people do. And basically, that's what an Instapot is. I have to tell you though that I really only use my Instapot for legumes and like lentils and beans and stuff like that. That's pretty much all I use it for. I have like a Japanese rice cooker I use for doing sushi rice, but I could probably do my sushi rice in an Instapot as well. So yeah, but I use it all the time. It is safe. Definitely follow the directions on the package that it comes with because they can be dangerous from the steam that comes off of them. And make sure that there's usually a nonstick lining on the inside of the Instapot. Make sure there's no scratches on it as well because you don't want some of the nonstick leaking off into your food. But otherwise, great, safe product and works wonderful. Maria, hi, Chef Dan. Can you share any thoughts about Butler soy curls? So yeah, Butler soy curls are basically like a textured vegetable protein. They are a soy product. There's usually not too much more in them, which is interesting. They are processed to be able to get it to that point, but they basically offer the texture of like beef, kind of like a like chunked beef, if you will. And I've used them a couple times, but not a lot. I've typically used textured vegetable protein like granules instead for like a taco mix or something like that, or I'll use it in soups. or chilies. It's probably more often where I use that. But yeah, I know a lot of people that use them. I've had them in many, many different dishes and stir fries and stuff like that. So, they work well. They get the kind of texture that you're looking for. I just definitely don't make it like a main staple. It's not something I have often. I might have it 3 times a year or something like that. But cool product to be able to really kind of mimic that kind of beef-like texture that you might find in a stir fry. All right, Catherine, what's your favorite recipe using azuki beans? Oh, azuki beans are wonderful. So typically, what I'll do is I will soak my azuki beans and then cook them and kind of strain off some of the funkiness on them and then drain them off. It's actually important to drain off the water that's in the azuki bean. Then, after they're fully cooked, I will put them into a blender with dates and blend them into a paste. And that is typically how I use azuki beans is the paste. And you can do them just like on a toast, but if you make like a little bun kind of a thing, a dumpling, it's a nice Japanese treat, that's in those, and it's basically like it's usually a milk bread, but you can do other versions like plant based out of them, to be able to make the dumpling, and they're just really lovely to be able to have like that. So typically, in Japan, they would do like a white sugar or something in it, but just to be able to keep it plant based, whole food plant based, I usually will do dates instead. So dates with azuki beans are quite tasty. My kids tried those very young, and definitely kind of a little different flavor profile. All right, Sue, is Ruby planning on doing any online classes about the Instapot? I would be very interested. Thanks. We talk about doing all kinds of different classes at Ruby. Instapot has definitely been on the list. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of recipes out there for the Instapot. And so I would probably use that resource in the meantime, because I know, like, if we were working on a class, I'd personally be working on it, and it's not on my docket at the moment. I'm not saying that we wouldn't do one in the future, but at the moment, we're not going to launch a Instapot course. I can say basically at least this year. So we don't have one at the moment, but there are a lot of different recipes out there to be able to utilize those. So good luck on the search. Bell, hello. When you put dried beans in the pressure cooker, do you have to soak them? Actually, no, you don't, Bell. Some people, say that you have to, but I've never ever soaked a bean before putting it in a pressure cooker, and they've always come out just fine. That's a nice thing about the pressure cookers. It's basically cooking them in high pressure, so the moisture absorbs right into them. So um, you don't have to soak them. It's one of the great things about having the pressure cooker, because it makes everything very, very fast compared to slaving over the stove top over your beans for hours instead. So yeah, but you do not have to soak them beforehand. Bonnie, what is the secret to no oil stir fry? I always feel like I need to add oil or end up adding too much water so it doesn't burn or stick to the pan. So the secret basically here is to be able to deglaze and deglaze often, but with not a lot of water. So you basically, if you're making a stir fry, you're typically going to start with your ingredients, like your onions and mushrooms or something like that. And once they start to stick to the pan a little bit, you're just going to deglaze with a little bit of water or vegetable stock or something like that. But I mean, just like a tablespoon should be able to do it. And your wok should be, hot enough. So as you're basically adding it, it's releasing the vegetables from being stuck to the pan, but also it's the water's kind of, evaporating almost instantly as you're doing it at the same time. So it's a little bit of a dance, right? Going between the two things, making sure that you're, doing just adding just enough liquid to it to be able to let the vegetables start to cook, but then also release from the pan at the same time. So yeah, just a little bit of liquid goes a long way for that, but you have to do it often in order to get the nice, uh, caramelization that happens on those two. All right, Suzette, what is your tip for learning to professionally cut using a chef knife? We have a wonderful section on knife skills in most of our classes. So if you're in one of our classes, you should probably be able to find the knife skills section on those. So that will walk you through those pretty well. We also have a free lesson, I believe. So if you go to the top of your page, even the one you're looking at, you can probably go to your dashboard and look up lessons to be able to find where you can find some of the knife skills courses on those too. Catherine, do you work with sourdough? Wondering if you can share how to love the starter. Catherine, I have worked with sourdoughs. I don't currently have a starter. Um, I I'm just not the best babysitter of the starter because, basically every day you have to get your starter out and have a conversation with it, maybe have a cup of coffee or tea. I'm joking, but you basically have to get it out every day and feed it and work with it to be able to make it work. Most people that I know that do sourdough make a loaf pretty religiously almost every day, if not every other day. Now, the great thing about that is if you have friends that do sourdough, you too can do sourdough because everybody always has extra starter they can use or give away, because you can keep feeding it and feeding it and feeding it. The best sourdoughs basically have to be fed very regularly. In fact, in Europe, there are places where they have sourdough babysitting places where you take your sourdough and they feed it for you while you go on vacation. That has been my downfall with sourdough. Anytime I go to take a vacation, I don't have a babysitter for it, so it usually falls apart. And I've done it for, the longer you don't feed the sourdough, the more sour and kind of funky it gets. It's one of the, kind of the cornerstone flavors of like San Francisco style sourdoughs. It's a little bit more sour. But yeah, so basically feeding it, using it a lot, you can end up with a lot of starter too, which is great for doing other things like pizza. And I've even, seen people do like pastas and stuff with it as well too. But yeah, my days of sourdough kind of ebb and flow. I love the idea of it, and I want to be able to have sourdough bread in my kitchen as often as possible. But I can't. I got two kids, and those are the ones that take most of my energy. I can't have another pet to be able to feed in that same way every single day. But more power to you. It's a fun hobby to be able to have, and the bread that comes out when you do it just comes out so wonderfully. And love that it's really good for your gut at the same time too. So good luck on your adventure, Catherine. Peyton, hello. I'm making yaki udon and cannot locally source some of the ingredients: wild mushrooms, Worcestershire sauce, sambal olik, and sesame oil and mirin. Any suggested substitutes? So I'm a little surprised you can't find some of these ingredients. The mushrooms, you can use any kind of mushrooms you want to be able to make udon. The rest of these are basically for your sauce, right? So you don't have to use a Worcestershire sauce, although I'd be shocked if you couldn't find a Worcestershire sauce in pretty much every grocery store. Sambal leek is a hot sauce. You definitely don't need to use that one in particular. You can use something like a sriracha, which can be found in pretty much every grocery store. Sesame oil and mirin. You can always find those basically in the international aisles of a grocery store. But if not, try looking for an Asian mart near you. There are a lot of them in different cities. They're typically a small kind of standalone grocery store. But Peyton, if you email us at support@ruby.com, we can always help find a place near you. Just tell us the city that you're living in, and we usually do just a quick search to be able to find a place that we would know that would carry the products like that. But most of these things are pretty easy to be able to substitute out. Again, the mushrooms, you can use any kind of a mushroom. The Worcestershire sauce should be able to find at any grocery store. It's going to be kind of near like sauces like ketchups and stuff like that. The hot sauce, you can use this hot sauce if you'd like. Sesame oil and mirin, those are two ingredients where it's a little hard to replicate because the mirin is basically like a sweet kind of a wine, but it's cooking. And the oil, you could use a non-sesame oil. You could actually toast some sesame seeds to be able to get the flavor out of those too. So you can definitely use something a little bit different from those, but I'll bet you if you did a little bit of a search in your town or a Google search, you'd be able to find them pretty quickly. But feel free to email us and we'll help you on that journey too, Peyton. Well, that was nice, short, and sweet. Thank you for joining us at Ask Me Anything Office Hours. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy cooking.